Hello, and welcome to the Prairie Fibre Witch podcast. I'm Sarah. I'm coming to you from my little bit of the internet, uploading from Edmonton, Alberta, which is in the Canadian prairies. Welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. If you're new, thanks for checking me out. This is mostly a knitting podcast, but I get up to other crafts. I've been sort of stitching a lot lately. Well, stitching somewhat lately, like cross stitching. So I'm going to talk a bit about that today. And making masks too, because of the times that we're in. Yeah. So I'll tell you a little bit about the sweater that I'm wearing. It's related to one of my current works in progress. This is the Plover cardigan by Jacqueline Cieslak, which I test knit for her last fall. And it is sort of a cropped, yeah, maybe a little too close, cropped cardigan, with sleeves with like a little puff at the cuff, which is kind of nice. Nice lightweight cardigan, and I haven't worn it a lot because I don't know, I'm not one for oversized garments necessarily, but I've been picking it up lately and I'm starting to really like it. So, and yeah, she has a new pattern that's coming out that's a pullover version of this cardigan that I have signed up to test knit again. So you'll see that a little bit later. What have I been making? Now normally in my show notes, I always link to my Ravelry project pages. I'm going to try and find alternative links for the patterns that I'm talking about so that for those who have issues accessing Ravelry right now, that you have an alternate way to sort of see what I'm talking about if you want more details on something. I'm toying with the idea of like starting up a blog to keep project pages so that I can have details about what I would put on a Ravelry project page, but have that on in another space, hopefully in a template that's more accessible. Let me know how you feel about that. And so right now, I always put I put show notes in the description box, or the doobly-doo. That's, there's like a little arrow that you can press at the bottom underneath the video, and it expands that information. And if you have any questions of information that I haven't put on there, you can always ask in the comments, and I'm happy to answer questions about that. Yeah, so I don't know. I might start a blog. I might not. I once upon a time did have a blog back in the early days of Ravelry, but it sort of petered out, and I don't know how interested people are in reading blogs these days. I know I personally don't really read blogs and that kind of content. So, like podcasting is a lot of work. Maintaining a blog is kind of a lot of work too, and I'm not designing or selling patterns, so it would only be information about projects that I'm working on. So let me know how you feel about that, and maybe that'll be a new development in the future. So first thing I'm going to talk about, I've made a couple batches of masks. I made some masks a few months ago, and because Edmonton, though the province hasn't made a declaration that masks are mandatory, the city that I live in has made a bylaw that masks are required in all public spaces. I was already wearing masks, and my family has been wearing masks, my parents, and because of the ordinance, I just figured we might be going through more masks than usual. So I made another batch, and I also made some to send to a friend of mine in Quebec, where it's also mandatory to wear masks in public spaces indoors, because she was having trouble finding masks or like she had ordered some masks, they took a long time, but then like it took me like a month to make them because my sewing, like, I don't have a nice sewing setup. Like my machine isn't just set up and ready to go, so it just seems like there's a lot of friction for me to get up to doing a sewing project. But I mean, it took less time than I was mentally estimating for the project. So like some of that is just faffing about. It's easier for me to just sit on the couch and knit than to sit at my sewing machine. Anyway, so I made this last batch I think was about 30 masks or so. And I cut into some of my, these are some matches that I had, this is fabric that I had bought back when I worked at a yarn and fabric store in Montreal. I had planned to make a dress, have never made the dress. I have more than I would need for the kind of dress that I was thinking anyway, so I've used some of this for making masks. And I'm trying this new, like, one of the barriers to making masks for me was I was kind of low on elastic, and I was gonna try doing t-shirt ties, like t-shirt ear loops, using some like leftover jersey fabric from other sewing projects. And then I tried that, and then the jersey that I was using like totally stretched out while I was sewing, and so that frustration of having that problem also didn't help me get the masks done in a reasonable amount of time. So another friction point for me. So on the recommendation of Susan of the Knit Lib podcast, I tried out this Katia elastic cord. There are fabric stores here, but they're like chain fabric stores. And I had gone to try and see if I could find elastic, but like 1/4 inch elastic or smaller is like impossible to find. I had gotten some thicker elastic, and then I tried using that on a mask, and it was just like not gonna work. You really want 1/4 inch elastic or narrower. And I'm kind of thinking that like narrower elastic would make for a more like comfortable mask. So I decided I was looking around at fabric stores in Canada that had elastic, and I thought I would check out Rick Rack Textiles that Susan's always talking about on her podcast, which is a store in Calgary, which is about 3 hours away from me, to see if they had elastic and what like shipping costs would be. And it wasn't so expensive to ship, and they had this elastic cord. It's called Katia elastic cord. It comes in different colors. Here I bought green and blue to play with. I bought about 10 meters of each. And it was 75 cents Canadian a meter, which is cheaper than some of the elastics that I was seeing online. So, and it took like a day to get to me once it had shipped. They were really quick with their turnaround. So if you're in Western Canada and looking for a source for cute fabrics or mask making supplies, I would check out what they've got. So this is some fabric that I had bought like a meter of a year or two ago to make like some project bags or something. I just thought the fabric was really nice. So I used some of that to make some masks. I used these matches. My personal preference is for like florals and sort of girly fabrics. So, but I'm also making masks for like my dad to wear. He doesn't really care what he wears, whether they're, flowers or not. But I wanted to make some for my friend and her husband, and I didn't think that he would want butterflies. So that's also why I dipped into this match fabric, was for his batch of masks. And I had cut a few extra for our batch. And then this is some fabric that someone had given me at some point. I have like, and I would use it probably for quilting, which I've discovered that for quilting, you really don't need a lot of fabric, especially like I like to do, I don't know if it's officially considered this or not, kind of like a scrappy quilt. So use lots of different types of fabrics together. So which really means you don't need very much of any individual fabric. If you're using like 10 to 20 different fabrics, it can really just be little pieces. So I think I used one piece and cut out enough for like 8 masks or something. So, and I'm team pleated mask, as you can see. When I just feel like they're really easy to cut out because you're cutting out rectangles. And then the pattern that I follow is one that was published in the New York Times. And it's they've made it open access for their coronavirus updates. I think they still have that. But that's what they were doing at the time that they published this pattern. It's sort of loose on the details on how you should pleat the mask. And I found what they suggested for the length of elastic did not fit me at all. It was way too loose. But I've found with making masks and making masks for me and my parents is that you kind of have to fit the mask to the person. So like what works, I have like kind of a small face, my ears are somewhat close to my face. So I only use about a 5-inch piece that I sew in, which my dad has found with the elastic masks that I've made that has been too short, which he didn't tell me until I was making another set of this set of masks. So I could have made some for him that fit him better if he had said something. But with this elastic cord, like the 5 inches works for me, but then it's really stretchy. So he actually tried these on and it works for him too, even just using the same length. But again, I would say if you're trying to make masks for a specific person, it would be helpful for you to be able to fit it to the person. And what I have done for pleating is I measure, this is the top, pleats go down. The pleats sort of go down like this. And I measure 1 inch from the top, and then I measure 1 inch that gets pleated up, and then then I space them about a 1/2 inch apart. And the last pleat, there's 3 pleats, and the third pleat I make 1 inch and a quarter. So there's 1 inch and a quarter fabric that gets folded up. So you can see this one kind of overlaps a little bit more the previous pleat. That's about as clear as I can explain it. If you are trying to use this pattern to make masks and you want some clarification, I can try, again, leave me a comment and I can try and explain that a little clearer or send you a diagram or something. So these are just 3 of the fabrics that I used in this last batch. And yeah, we've already been using them and they're quite good. These I can throw in the washing machine. We don't dry our masks. My dad sometimes irons them dry, but because of the elastic, you can't really throw them in the dryer. What else have I finished? I was talking last time about cross stitch, and I finished the piece that I was working on. This is Chill Vibes Only by Junebug and Darlin, and I really loved stitching this, and especially like after getting the Q-snap frame, I like stitch on this steadily until it was finished. The only thing that I'm missing is a lot of people recommend having the grime guard that's sort of like a piece of fabric with elastic around it that goes around the edges so that your hands don't get dirty. I don't know if you can see on here. I tried to wash it and get those grimy bits out, but there was I did get some like hand grime on my nice white linen as I was stitching. So that's something to be cautious about. And I'm really pleased. I've started like Like Michelle of the Striped Rose always say, you should sign your work. You should always sign your work. So there's a little, I've started just doing it low-key, not like visible, but not super obvious, just like initials and the year. And I do the full year because, you know, I mean, it's obvious that it's not like 1920, but still, I think it's just more clear to have the full year. And so this was, the only thing I did, the colors are all the colors that are in the pattern of the original chart. The only thing I changed was I stitched this on 40 count linen, which is, the color is Attic Lace by Lakeside Linens, and this was a gorgeous linen to work on, and I would definitely use it again for a future project. And the last thing I finished since last time was my disaster socks. These socks induced a whole bunch of swearing last episode, and I got them done. I went back and I fixed them. So what I did was, when I originally made these socks, I had planned to do Afterthought heel socks, but I was like, and so I was counting rows to make sure that they were the same, and I miscounted when I did the second sock, and the heel, like the leg of the sock, was too short, and I didn't notice until I had put in the heel and put it on my foot and woven in all the ends, and it just didn't fit. And it's actually this sock, I can tell, that was too short. So what I did was I took out the heel, I took out the yarn for the heel, and then I put the stitches back on the holders, and then I, with a spare piece of yarn, which was my only leftovers from knitting the first sock, which is about, you know, this much yarn, I grafted it together. And you can kind of see what I did after grafting it. I made that be the top of the sock, so that if there was any weakness in that graft, it wouldn't be in a place that would wear heavily like a heel would. So it wouldn't be stressed it would be less stressed than where it would be if it were near the heel. So yeah, so that's what I did. So I think it's about here-ish. And then I took out the cuff, re-knit what I needed for the length, which I about triple, quadruple, like quintuple checked before, you know, doing the ribbing and casting off. And again, I did not have very much yarn left after that, which was, you know, should have been a flash that they were not the right size to begin with when I was doing these the first time. But, you know, you have to pay attention to these things and not get excited about wanting to have finished socks. Put the heel back in, tried it on, it fits, and woven all the ends again, and these are now finished. This yarn is Woolly Mammoth Fibers in her natural sock, which is a very lovely base. It would be a dream to have some of this in a sweater's quantity, I think. And the heels and toes are from a mini skein set that I had bought from her. I didn't use all of the mini, so I'll use that in another project sometime. And the color of these socks, of the body of the socks, was a one-of-a-kind colorway. I think it's just like spring one-of-a-kind #1 or something like that. So, which was too pretty in the skein to just leave. So I cast them on right away, which I don't always do, but sometimes I do. And I think I knit these on 1.75 millimeter needles, which I believe is a US 00. And I'm happy with the gauge of these socks. And they fit nicely still, so they're not too tight. So that's about all that I've finished. since I last talked to you guys. Other things that I've been working on. When I finished the Chill Vibes cross stitch, I immediately started another cross stitch, which I'll get out for you. This, I first saw this being stitched. This is what Elena B of her Instagram is Von Golden Bones, and she has a cross stitch podcast. Well, they call it Stitchy Tube. It's one of the few Stitchy Tube videos that I still watch, because I just love Elena B. She's really awesome, and her antics that she gets up to with her sister. She has a crazy apartment in San Francisco. If you're remotely interested in cross stitch, I would check out her videos. She stitches gorgeous stuff. And so this is one that she started. It's a free pattern that I've linked in the description, or in the description box. It was a stitch along piece from a Dutch, I'm not sure if it's a blog or it seems to be a shop, but they did it as a stitch along in 2019. Elena chose different colors that are than are listed in the stitch along. I had got the original, the colors that are called for, and they were really somber and dark, so I messaged Elena on Instagram and asked her what color she was using in hers, and she was kind enough to tell me, and I will tell you. She was using Dinky dyes, so this is with a silk, and the red is Dinky Dyes 254 Heartthrob, and the blue is Dinky Dyes Silk. Oh, that is the same tag again. Okay, so, and then this is Dinky Dyes number 178 Twilight. And I'm quite happy with these colors and the variation that they have. I think they look really nice together. And I'm stitching on 40 count Zwigart Newcastle linen in cream, which is, I believe, the linen that's called for. And yeah, so that's coming along. And it stitches up pretty quickly. Like, I think this is maybe 2 or 3 days worth of stitching. And the pattern itself, because it's a reproduction of an antique sampler, it has like mistakes in it. And I've, straightened out some of the mistakes in my initial stitching and then made some other mistakes here and there. So I should pay closer attention to what I'm doing. But yeah. So I've been stitching on that. I haven't stitched on it recently, but I think it's been a few weeks since I stitched on this, since I started my test knit, but I'd like to get back to it because it was really fun. So Elena was sort of started this as her quarantine sampler, and so I guess it's now a quarantine stitch along. Yeah, so that's coming along nicely. And the motifs, like, the letters work up fairly quickly. I was surprised. Like, they seem really complicated, but you can still, it still chugs along, especially like compared to, I mean, the stitching in this, you're doing, it's got a lot more like solid areas of color, which take a lot longer to stitch than more airy motifs, like in the sampler. What else am I working on? I finished my Noro sock tube. And I don't know if I explained how this is going to work entirely. I do still have a bit of yarn here, but it's not going to stripe anymore because, like, there's only one color that's left. So Maybe I'll use that to make a toe or something, and then I can, you know, start the sock. So like my plan for this was a lot of people who have, a lot of knitters who have sock machines, when they start using them, they just make a tube and then they do like an Afterthought everything sock, which means like you add a toe, you add a cuff, and then you cut and add an Afterthought heel. And an Afterthought heel is really cool because it's kind of like just knitting another toe, another wedge toe. It's the same thing again, just where the heel would be. And so I think these will be shorty ones. These will definitely be shorty socks because I feel like, I mean, if we compare to this Afterthought, like, I don't know if this is a good exercise to do. Like, okay, so that would be where the heel would go. And then that's times 2. So like that's where the heel would go, and that'll be, that's still a decent size sock. If that's where the, if this is where the heel goes, and then this becomes the leg of the sock, that's a decent amount of sock to it. So I don't have a sock machine, so I was just continuing with my fun striping that I was having left over from my Noro stripy socks that I made about a month ago, and just knit a stripy tube with what was left over, continuing from the inside and outside of the ball. I am gonna have to use contrast color for the heels and toes. I haven't decided yet. I have some like random brownish cottony yarn that I think I was gonna use for the contrast. I just haven't bothered to get it out yet. I've just sort of left it at this state for a little bit. But, I mean, knitting stockinette things is something that I do when the school term is on. I am a master's student studying to be a librarian. I study online, and so I knit stockinette while I'm doing readings for class. So I had a couple weeks break, so I wasn't doing that kind of reading where I needed something to knit at the same time. So I just haven't really worked on it, but I'm sure these will get finished in the next little while. Especially this, it'll be fun putting in the heels and stuff and measuring properly this time. That's the one thing that I'm gonna do, is I'm going to measure and double check before I cut things. Oh, and this is a Noro that I've had in my stash for a while. I had intended it for like a cowl or something, but it never became that. So this was a stitch along that I did with my friend Janina in Quebec. I sent her a skein. We both made striping socks. They both ended up looking like quite different from each other, although they're obviously all friends because they're the same colors. So that was really fun. And yeah. What's next? You've seen this a few times if you've watched multiple podcasts, and it's continued. I've worked on it. It's not, I can't remember where I was on the sleeve last time, so this sleeve is totally done. This is a second Stockbridge cardigan. Stockbridge is the pattern by Ysolda Teague that it's a nice sort of basic cardigan. Works up nice in fingering weight yarn. I feel like she's got a heavier weight, like a DK or something version that she's either working on or has recently released. I suspect. I think. I don't know. So the body is done. One sleeve is done. We're almost done the second sleeve. So I feel like this is maybe double the length of this sleeve. since the last time. Again, I was using this as, because it's a nice stockinette sweater with not terribly too much going on. I mean, there's good shaping and detail in this pattern. I was using this for knitting while I was reading during the school term, and that's about to start up again for me. My term starts this week for fall, so yeah, I've geared up on that because I want to knit another one, which I have kind of already cast on. So I should probably finish this one before I start a whole new one. And this yarn is Holst Supersoft, which is a very affordable yarn, even ordering it from, I believe it's Danish. And you can order directly from their website, and the shipping is not expensive. And in non-quarantine times, it comes in like a week or so, even coming through customs, where ordering from other countries, obviously it would be longer now that we're in pandemic times, because everything's taking longer, but it was reasonable to order directly from their website. And I believe they have a Black Friday sale every, what is that, the Friday after American Thanksgiving in November. So you can, get this inexpensive yarn for even more inexpensively. And so I think this sweater cost me probably $20 for the yarn, which is insane. And then you can also buy their yarn on cones, which would give you even more value. And the one thing about this yarn is it has spinning oil in it still as you knit it, even if you're knitting it from it comes in these little cakes, but it does block out and fluff up very nicely. The trick that I found to do that is you wash it in warmer water than you would normally. Don't agitate it, just let it hang out for a little while in the water and then block it, and it'll be very nice. So I'm very happy to almost have a sweater here. Yeah, and that's a nice inexpensive yarn choice. That's also the Holst Supersoft is what I used for this cardigan too. Yeah, and they have lots of different colors. So I would say some good affordable 100% wool. It's not merino soft, but I wouldn't call it scratchy either. It's not Icelandic yarn either, or Icelandic wool. They call it super soft, and it's quite soft. I have no problems wearing it next to my skin. Next, what do we got next? I'm going to show you the test knit that I've been teasing about. And I'm allowed to talk about this. The nice thing about test knitting for Jackie is usually her test knits are sort of open, so you can talk about them. I can talk about them as I'm working on them. And this, it looks similar to what I'm wearing because it's the same idea, but the pullover version. And it's knit at a different gauge. It's a little bit heavier gauge, and so I'm using, this yarn is, I don't know if Ravelry calls it a fingering weight, but I think the company does. This is Custom Woolen Mills, which is a mill here in Alberta. It's their 2-ply sock weight in mustard, and this is yarn that I bought when I went to their mill on a little sort of short family summer vacation that we took just here in Alberta, little road trip, because it's a couple hours away from Edmonton on the way to Calgary. And in the summers and normal conditions, I don't know if they are open for tours right now, but in non-pandemic times, they have mill tours that you can book every Friday. They're open for mill tours. They like you to RSVP in person, I think, just so they know how many people are coming, but there's no charge. And then they have a store on site where they sell all of the yarns that they make, and fiber and felting materials and stuff like that. And it's really fun. So if you're ever like wanting to go on a fun little yarny trip and can convince the people that you live with or that you travel with that it's a really cool tour. My dad had a lot of fun seeing the like 19th century spinning equipment that they use, spinning and the like their carding machines and everything. It's a lot of fun. And as you can see, mine is turning out kind of blotchy, or at least it's really blotchy on top, because I'm not sure if it's because I bought this wool at the mill store, so it's like maybe the beginning or end of a run where the color's a little more inconsistent. But I do recall seeing somewhere that they suggest for their yarn, for the custom woolen mills, to alternate skeins. So after I saw like this lovely bright line show up just after joining in the round, I started alternating skeins at about this point. And so it's, I mean, the body is a lot more even, and I've started on the first sleeve. And I mean, by the time I saw how blotchy it was getting, I was like, I'm not ripping out. I'm just keep going. I'm just gonna keep going, and it'll just be kind of blotchy. And yeah, and it's like noticeable when you wear it, but this is sort of like a fun sweatshirt kind of sweater. I mean, I think it's a little bit more presentable than a sloppy sweatshirt, but I feel like it's going to be that kind of just throw on whenever kind of sweater. So, and like it kind of looks intentional. I don't know. It just looks like stripes, right? So it's not, I mean, it's kind of on the boobs, but it's not like right over the apex of the boob. So, yeah, so I'm knitting this out of the Custom Woolen Mills, which, again, is a nice yarn. This is a 30% wool, and they do a blend of, I believe, Rambouillet and Merino, grown, in Western Canada. And, any wool from their, like, they also make wool comforters, which is kind of cool. So if you wanted to have like a wool duvet, and they have this really neat old contraption that somebody like purposefully built out of other machines to like quilt their comforters, which is really cool. So yeah, again, if you're able to go on a tour, I suggest it. Or if you're going to Calgary for some reason, it would be a nice little side trip to do. Yeah, when they're open, you check on their website or email them or something. And so I'm knitting this on my interchangeables. I'm knitting this on a 3.75 millimeter needle. And I don't know what that is in a US size because, oh, it looks like a US 5 because the color is kind of worn off where it tells you what it is. And yeah, I have really cruised through this, and I think partly because it's a test knit, and I was really excited about my swatch when I was knitting it. So excited that I just like immediately cast on the sweater once I realized that I was I basically got gauge. So I think my row gauge is a little off, but what I've done is, because of the nature, this is a half brioche stitch, so it kind of looks different on the inside than it does on the outside. And because of that, it's really stretchy. So what I did was, you can kind of tell up here it looks a little better than on this part of the sleeve. And that's because I put it on waste yarn and I steam blocked it with an iron before I was measuring the length to see how I liked it. And like tried it on too to see if where I liked where it hit. I originally was going to knit this in the cropped length, but after trying it on, it kind of hit me in a bad place on my belly, so I decided to lengthen it. I think it's not quite at the full length because I have a short torso, so it's like, I don't know, slightly cropped. So that's that sweater. And then what else do we have in here? Yes. I haven't worked on this a lot in the past week because I've been working on that sweater. But I restarted this Rebel 2 shawl that I had shown last time. I think last time I was talking about that I was going to restart it for a third time and switch the colors. Or restart it for a second time to swap. I don't know. I swapped the colors like twice on this. So, because again, it's hard to know, should this be the front? Should this be the front? We finally decided that what I had gone with the first time was good to have as the front. So, I'm just cruising along. I mean, it sucks to have to rip things out, but I find with these more complicated 2-color brioche projects that it is kind of helpful to, you know, start and restart to get familiar with how the chart works and the stitches that you're going to be doing, and like, because there's increases and decreases, and get into the rhythm of what you're doing, so it wasn't so arduous to restart it a few times. And okay, what am I using for this? This is a Decadent project out of some lovely hand-dyed yarns, which, as you can, I mean, I do work with hand-dyed yarns. I do like hand-dyed yarns, and I have dyed wool and yarn by hand, and it is a lot of work, so it is worth the price. Yeah. This is some junk yarn. I don't remember the yarn base. It's maybe her smooth sock in the Madame Leota colorway, which I believe she's put for sale again. And it's a really lovely, like, I don't know if it entirely shows up on camera, but it's this really lovely blue and purple that's quite bright. And I like that it stands up nicely with this other more speckly all over the place color. And this other yarn is I might sneeze, maybe not. I would have preferred to have just sneezed. This I believe is Howl and Sophie by La Bien-Aimée in their Cashmerino base. Which is, my mom really loved this colorway, and, you know, she follows some yarn people on Instagram, including La Bien-Aimée, and so every once in a while she's like, I need to have this yarn, and I need it to be in a project. So as soon as it came, we found this, which I have had in my queue for a while, and yeah, so this is going to be for her, and it's a shawl pattern by, I believe, Leslie Ann Robinson. Ooh, I think that's right. And yeah, I've knit one of her other patterns, which was even more complicated brioche, like more patterned brioche than this. I think it was the Sizzle Pop shawl. And they, I mean, they're lovely patterns, but they take a lot of attention. So, I mean, I do knit these in front of the TV, but preferably when there's no subtitles. And like, I mean, I did restart this 3 times, so I had a little bit of practice. So now I'm knowing what I'm doing. And yeah, I'll get back to that probably after I finish the mustard sweater. And I'm just gonna pause because I have to go get my other project that I started just yesterday. Okay, I'm back. Doesn't look like much yet, but this is my next Stockbridge cardigan. And I'm calling this my Earthsea Stockbridge cardigan because I've started reading the first of the Earthsea books by Ursula K. Le Guin. And I don't know, this color kind of feels like an Earthsea color. It is a Jamieson & Smith 2-ply jumper weight in this gorgeous color. I think it shows up well on camera. In some lights it looks green, in some lights it looks more bluey purple, or just kind of like from afar, maybe sort of grayish, but it's got all this lovely complexity to it. I originally got this yarn, it just arrived I think in the last few days, and I originally got this yarn for a color work project. I might swatch it to see if it'll work for that project, but I thought it was a little too close to one of the colors to stand out properly. I might have to swatch it to double check that, but I also thought that this was just a gorgeous color and wished I had ordered a cone of this yarn, which I might do in the future, which is kind of crazy pants, because the cones from Jamieson & Smith is like 500 grams of yarn, so that's like a couple sweaters worth, and I already have 1 sweater's worth, so that would be like 3 sweaters with this as the color. But it's such an amazing color that maybe that's not a crazy idea. I don't know. Haven't done it yet. I did price it out, and like a cone with shipping and everything is like $70 Canadian, which is not bad. So, but I mean, it would be coming from Shetland, which I imagine would take like a month to get here. Yeah. So I haven't pulled the trigger on that yet. Future plans, perhaps. So this is another Stockbridge cardigan that, I mean, I just cast it on yesterday and have done a few rows of ribbing. So it's maybe not super exciting. But I got really excited to put this yarn in. I had to try it right away. One of the things that I have done for my Stockbridge cardigans that I've made is, because I knit swatches of the yarn to sort of find a gauge that I liked the yarn at, which weren't exactly the gauge required in the pattern. So what I did was I adapted the gauge that I was using and found the numbers that worked for that in the pattern to get the size that I wanted. So basically what I did is I figure out the gauge per inch that I'm working at, and then figure out the target size that I want and what stitch count is closest to that target stitch count are the instructions that I follow. And then also I adapted, because this pattern is mostly knit with row counts rather than like saying knit for X many inches, I actually converted all the row counts to work with my row gauge for these sweaters. And so this one is actually closer in gauge to what's written in the pattern than what I have knit with the Holst versions that I've made. So I might still look at the row count and see if I need to adapt that. But so I've now got on my pattern, I've got one set of instructions circled for this version, and then I've highlighted the numbers that I'm using for this version. So hopefully I can keep those apart in my brain. That's maybe also part of why like I should finish this one before I get too much further on this one, is simply so that I don't mix myself up and like make a major mistake. I'll keep you posted on how that goes. Because when I get excited about something, I just want to work on it like all the time. Yeah. And I know I have other sweaters that I have started this year that I haven't worked on. I'll get to them at some point. And some point soon, probably. Like, I have intentions to get back to them. But yeah, that's where, there's a lot of things that I want to be working on, like, all at the same time right now. So, yeah, it'll be nice to get some things, like, done, and then I can go work on the other things that I want to work on. And yeah, I don't work on, like, one project at a time. Obviously, I've got multiple projects going on right now. And I do, like, really feel like starting a whole bunch of things right now, which is fine. But, like, having, like, it does give me a bit of anxiety having a lot of things going at once. So, but I mean, I'm back to having my attention span being, like, work on one thing really solidly and then get it done, and then go on work on something else. So I'm sort of back into my regular rhythm of knitting, where, you know, earlier this year I wasn't knitting, or, you know, a few months ago when lockdown quarantine first started, I wasn't knitting so much. And I haven't been playing Animal Crossing in the past few weeks. They did do a fireworks update, like, every Sunday in August, which is really cute. I did participate in that once, and it was, like, freaking adorable. But yeah, I don't have a lot of stuff I want to do on my island at the moment, even though it's not a 5-star island. I don't have gold roses or any gold tools or anything, but it's also kind of like, what's really the point, because, you know, they break too. So, what's the big drive? Anyway, yeah, I did do some, like, dream traveling, which was kind of interesting to see other people's islands. And one of the things that I decided I wanted to add to my island was, like, a cute little graveyard, which maybe sounds strange, but I think graveyards can be pretty. I mean, when I lived in London, like, graveyards were kind of like just parks that you walked through, and like parts of the city, right? They weren't like they are in North America, gated, sort of close to the public, and, you know, less integrated into everyday life. Okay, what do I want to talk about next? We want to talk about books. I finished How to Be Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, and he is an excellent writer. I really enjoyed how he had structured his book, and I look forward to reading more of his work. I also read The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady somebody. It's in the details down below. That one started out really fun. It kind of gets not so fun in the middle, like, yeah. But then it ends well. They get him. But yeah, and there's like one black character in the book who is someone who is only a part of these, you know, middle-class white women's lives because she's like a caregiver for one of the women's elderly mother-in-laws. And even though the black woman draws their attention to this character being a suspicious vampire person and like harming youth in the black community, the white people don't do anything right away. So, I mean, they eventually do, but only when they're personally affected. So I guess that's just a little, it was like, I mean, maybe it's just a little too close to real life. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it starts out really fun. They are told they're going to be a part of this book club, and then the person who organized the book club assigns everybody a book, and then when it's their turn, they have to like research the author and present all of this, give a 20-minute presentation on the book and its importance in literary history. And the main character that we're following, she's responsible for the first book, and she never even read the book, and so tries to pull it out of her ass, and it doesn't go well, and then immediately that book club gets disbanded. And yeah, so I thought that part was really funny. So yeah, I thought it would be a fun thing for a book club to read. If you're a part of a book club with a bit of a sense of humor, that might be an interesting one to read. What else did I read? I started reading the Carrie Fisher biography that I have out of the library that I talked about that I showed last time. And I mean, Carrie Fisher's a very interesting character. I would suggest reading her books because she has several like memoir style books that she wrote during her life, and she is a very good writer. The person who wrote this biography, it's not that it's terribly written, it's just not that interesting. And so far, I mean, it's giving me detail about like her early life and everything, but I don't know, it's not grabbed me, so I might just not read that one. And what else do I have on there? I sort of looked a little bit at Rusty Brown, but I haven't really dug into it yet. The one that I have started reading is the first of the Earthsea books by Ursula K. Le Guin, which I've never read. My mom's like, "Ugh, I read those when I was a kid." I was like, well, you know, you never told me to read them, so I haven't ever read them. I got a copy. I actually bought a copy of these books because my library only had the first book. So I have I think it's a Penguin edition that has the first 4 books in it. And that's the version that I've linked to in the description. And so, I mean, I'm only like maybe 3 or 4 chapters in, but I'm really loving it. I'm really digging it. So, yeah, that's why, I don't know, this color kind of seems like a, you know, magician's cloak kind of color, because it, you know, sort of changes in the light as to how it looks. The color number is 1280 if you're looking for some interesting kind of gray, kind of not yarn. Yeah, that's about all I've got to talk about today, which is still, we're clocking in at about an hour, so that's not bad. Yeah. Ravelry has some issues with accessibility, which I think a lot of people have spoken about. I personally don't have issues using it, and I do still use it. I was using the old version, but I did recently switch to the new version to try and be a tester for one of their new beta testing program that they're doing. I understand if you're having difficulty, like, you do what works for you. I've never been good at keeping track of things on paper. Like, do I even... I have a knitting notebook that I started years ago that I've used like this much of it, and the notes are so random and don't have enough detail to ever like explain what I did. So the only reason that I've been good at keeping notes online is mostly because of Ravelry. So that format works for me, but I could adapt that. Like I said, I could adapt that into like a blog style version. Yeah, I could do that. It wouldn't be too much work to do that. It's just a matter of like, is it worth doing? Would people look at that? Yeah, I might do that in the next month. We'll see. Other than that, that's about all I've got. What have we been doing? Oh, pottery class. My mom, I guess, secretly has always wanted to take pottery classes and learn how to throw pots. I didn't know this until she, texted me while I was in the basement working on something for school, and she was like, do you want to sign up for pottery classes? And I was like, sure, I can sign up. I can learn how to do that. So there's a studio that's opened up here in Edmonton called Studio 72. It's sort of like a co-working, like they have like artist spaces and stuff like that. I think more for ceramics artists. And they have access to wheels and a kiln and all that jazz. And they do pottery classes. So we've signed up for the first level, and we've already had 2 classes. My mom has loved it so much that through a friend of mine from art school many years ago, who's still in Edmonton and happens to be a ceramics artist, I've borrowed a wheel for us to throw on at home. So we just moved that last night. Wheels are very heavy. They're not necessarily large objects, but they are very heavy objects. So be advised. Yeah, so we're sort of setting up a little home area so that we can practice, because my mom just feels like she just needs to do it a whole bunch of times so she gets the motions. But she really, like, it really clicked for her, like, the feel of making the pots. She really enjoyed, so she's into it. And yeah, my friend who's a ceramics artist has said that it takes like a year of throwing pots to get any good at it. And I mean, having done it, I can see that. Like, there's this, you have to center the clay on the wheel, like after you sort of slam it on there. And our instructor told us that the Japanese say that it takes 7 years to master just that skill of getting it centered in the wheel, and that's important because it makes it easier for you to throw the wheels. So, or throw the pots. You don't throw the wheel. The wheel you use for throwing. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm enjoying it. I like learning how to do new things. I don't think I'm going to become a ceramics artist. I mean, I kind of have enough hobbies, and like for me, the weaving earlier this year really clicked for me, and I would like to explore that further, but I'm happy to, be a buddy to my mom and help her get started with this excitement. And yeah, we went and bought some clay yesterday and some tools at Plainsman, and yeah, my mom had fun looking at the tools. I don't know. I feel it's kind of, they had really nice stuff there, and it would be very tempting to just, rebuy all the tools that we have, but I think we can sort of share between us. Yeah, so that's what we'll be doing, into September, and we might be doing that, you know, up till Christmas time. I'm not sure, taking classes. So yeah, I've posted some. I haven't been able to get lots of pictures because like a 3-hour art class is like not enough time sometimes for what you're trying to get done, and it's always a rush to clean up at the end. So I don't always get pictures of everything. I did take some pictures at the beginning of this class, which I posted on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram as Prairie Fiber Witch. You can find me on Ravelry as Jane Mumbles, but like if you're having issues with Ravelry, don't be obligated. I've also put my Goodreads, a link to my Goodreads there, since I talk about books. Maybe you're curious or want to be friends on Goodreads. I don't know. Do people do that? I have friends on Goodreads. They're people. It's a place that does stuff. I don't really put reviews on Goodreads. I kind of can't be bothered. I usually put a star rating though. Yeah, so happy Thursday, and I hope you have a great weekend coming up. Again, thanks for watching and sticking with me, and I'll see you again. Bye.